We love long summer days on a farm. It gives us a perfect excuse to bake something sweet like these cinnamon rolls. When my husband and I married almost 18 years ago, I wanted so bad to impress him with my baking skills. One Saturday morning, I decided to make my husband cinnamon rolls. I thought, how hard could it be? I'm gonna show him that I make the best cinnamon rolls. I knew nothing about working with yeast, but my young self thought, how hard could it be? I followed the recipe, and let me just say my cinnamon rolls turned out so hard and so inedible that I think we laughed for solid 30 minutes. So I set out on a mission to conquer my fear and try again and again and again until I figured out how to make the most delicious cinnamon rolls that now my children enjoy. Before I share tips on working with yeast, I want to touch up a little bit about mixing the dough. You initially mix all the ingredients and they come together. Do not stop. You want to continue to mix until not only the dough comes together, but also the dough no longer sticks to the sides of your bowl. It takes me approximately 15 minutes to mix my dough. By mixing the dough for this long, it allows my dough to develop gluten. Without gluten, your cinnamon rolls will be flat, crumbly, and dense. When you mix your dough properly and gluten is developed, you can do a stretch test. You take your dough out and you gently stretch it out. If it tears right away, keep on mixing. If you can stretch without seeing any tears, your dough is ready. You also will notice that your dough will be very smooth and shiny. Now let's chat a little bit about working with yeast. Unless the recipe specifies, I always used active dry yeast. I always activate it with lukewarm water. So the way I test my water is I run my water in a sink and I put my wrist under it. If it feels too hot, it will kill my yeast. If it feels too cold, my yeast will not activate. So you want to find that balance where it's just warm and pleasant to touch, so your yeast will get activated. Also, always look at the expiration date on your yeast. It's found on the back of the package. And if your yeast is expired, you're wasting your time. So always check the expiration date. Now let me show you a trick how I soften my butter. While my dough is rising, I prepare the cinnamon roll filling. My recipe calls for room temperature butter. So this is what I do. I fill my cup with water, then put it in the microwave for about 2 minutes. Let it get hot. I pour it out and then place the empty cup over my butter and let it sit for about 2 minutes. This trick works wonders. My butter is not melted, but softened just to perfection. Let's talk about another mistakes that people often make when making cinnamon rolls. If your yeast is not expired, if you have activated your yeast, if you mixed your dough long enough to where it developed gluten, the next problem possibly could be with your flat, dense cinnamon rolls is not allowing enough time for your dough to rise. You often see in the recipes when working with yeast dough that it says, wait for your dough to double in size. Well, what does that mean? I remember when I was young, I wanted a specific amount of time. Is it 1 hour? Is it 2 hours? And here's the answer. It can take an hour. It can take 2 hours. Sometimes it may take 3 hours. It all depends on the environment. For the dough to rise properly, you want it to be in a draft-free place. You want it also for that place to be warm. So if you during the summer months, it's cool in my house, so it takes for my dough to rise longer as opposed to wintertime when we have our wood stove going and I can place my dough near it. It can rise much quicker. During cooler months, I let my dough rise inside my oven. I turn the oven on just for a few seconds. I do not want it to rise above 100. I turn it off. I stick my hand in it and feel it. Is it hot or is it like warm? Just like your lukewarm water. If it feels warm and gentle on my hand, I'll put my dough in it. If it feels too hot, I'll leave the door open, let it cool off a little bit, and only then place my dough inside. Shut the door so it's draft free and let my dough rise. And it can take, again, during the cooler months, an hour to 2 hours to rise. You will know when your dough has doubled in size. I usually set a timer for an hour, check it after an hour. At that point, my dough just started to rise. Then I'll put it back in the oven, shut the door, and check again in about an hour. Usually it takes about an hour during hot months when it's cooler inside for my dough to fully double in size. You want to be patient with this step. If you do not allow for your dough to fully rise and double in size, your bread cinnamon rolls, whatever you make with your yeast dough, will be dense and hard and not very delicious. Now, if your stove is not available because you're cooking dinner or lunch, the day I was making this particular video for cinnamon rolls, I was cooking lunch, so my oven was not available. Instead, I let my dough rise on top of my stove top. The warmth that was coming from the stove being used was sufficient enough for my dough to rise. It may take a little longer, but that's another option you can use. Because it's cooler in my kitchen during the summer months, another trick that I use is for my cinnamon roll filling. If I feel that it's a little bit hard to spread on my dough, I would zip it up in the microwave no more than 5 seconds, and that does the trick. My favorite part of making cinnamon rolls is definitely cutting them. I use floss to cut them, and I don't know why, but I find this process so satisfying. It's like cutting through Play-Doh almost. I don't know. I just really enjoy this process. Now, you don't have to use floss to do it. You can use a knife, but you want to make sure that your knife is very, very sharp, because when you go to cutting it, if it's not sharp enough, your cinnamon roll swirl will be smooshed. So for that reason, I prefer, aside from satisfaction, I prefer to use a floss. When you cut it, it is guaranteed that your cinnamon roll swirls will be looking to perfection. Once you place your cinnamon rolls on your baking sheet, you want to cover it with a saran wrap or put a little clean towel over it. And again, put it in a warm place for them to rise. This is another important step that if you don't do it right, your cinnamon rolls will not be light and fluffy. And all you have to do for this step to come out right is to exercise your patience. Once you cover your cinnamon rolls with a clean towel or saran wrap, you want to put it in a warm place again. Now, this step takes a little bit less time than the first rise. It takes me about an hour for my cinnamon rolls to rise and double in size, and then I'll put them in the oven to bake, and during that time I make my cinnamon roll icing. You can use old-fashioned icing, that's just butter, a little bit of milk, and powdered sugar, but in my family we prefer the cream cheese version, which is just cream cheese, powdered sugar, and a little bit of butter. Forgot to mention the secret ingredient that makes this cinnamon roll so delicious is buttermilk. Have you ever had a cinnamon roll where the outside was tough but the inside was soft, so you kind of threw the outside away and just ate the inside of the cinnamon roll? Well, the buttermilk solved this problem for these cinnamon rolls. They are tender and soft on the outside, just as pillowy soft on the inside. And if you can't finish the whole batch of cinnamon rolls in one day, all you have to do is warm it up in the microwave the next day, and it will be just as delicious as the day they were baked. Full recipe for these cinnamon rolls is in my description section. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, and subscribe.